the stream, okay? And then I'm gonna go into XHR and script.js here. Oops. Okay, so I'm actually going to just create a new file, api.js, okay, and my computer is struggling. What do I got running? Nothing. I'm gonna close this. Close that. Come on. And that. And that. And is this running? No. Is this running? No. Okay. All right, it's real choppy, but we'll see how it does. Hide this. All right, so whenever we use fetch, so let's grab a new API JSON placeholder, I think is one. Real slow. All right, so we're gonna call to-dos. And if we just call this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say get to-dos. Okay. Equals async function, and then I'm going to say I'm going to get rid of these curly braces and just fetch, and I did not get the URL, I just copied the we can do const space URL equals that. Okay, so then we have /todos, okay? So I have this JSON placeholder typecode.com/todos. I'm gonna do an await here. Or let's see, not, we're gonna do like this. Okay, const result equals await fetch. Okay, const data equals await result.json. Okay, so fetch always returns this result object. It's always going to be the exact same result object. And remember, it just has information about the fetch. It doesn't have your actual data when you get whatever you get back from fetch. It gives you an object of information about your actual request. So it has the headers, it has where you request it from, the URL you requested to, the status of that request. And so we could say if not result dot okay, because we get this okay flag that says it was, everything was okay. Then we could say return console dot error. Or we could even say throw new error. Something was not okay. Okay. But otherwise we get this result object back that has a bunch of functions on it. And we get all these different response functions. And one of them is the JSON response function. Now, we know that this is a REST endpoint that returns from a JSON server. So it returns JSON. There's different things that they'll return. So there's blobs, there's form data, JSON, It could be text. It could be an array buffer. It could be let's see. It could be XML. It could be all sorts of different data types that come back. Now, for the most part, fetch expects that you're going to get application JSON back. Otherwise, we need to add a header that is accepts, and then this would be like application PNG, or if you're expecting to get something besides JSON data back, then you need to tell the fetch that you're expecting to get something else. So let's say you were making a fetch out to get images back. You would have to tell fetch, this isn't going to be JSON, it's going to be an image, and it's probably going to be a blob or whatever, right? So you'd have to tell it the type is a PDF or a PNG or whatever, and then you would use the blob or maybe text or something else besides JSON. So in this case, we use JSON because we know we're getting JSON back. Most of the APIs we use are going to return us some JSON data. Okay, so we're going to get this data back, and the JSON function is a promise, so we have to await for it to resolve. So we call JSON, it looks at the result, gets the data back from the result, and parses it to be JSON. So we don't have to parse it ourselves, it automatically takes whatever was returned, converts it to JSON for us. So now our data is going to be whatever the server sent back as its response. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll say, in fact, I'm going to move this here, comment this out for just a second. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this. So, and I'm just going to call the fetch by itself so we can see in the browser what it does. Okay, so index HTML, I'm going to script source equals AJAX, or what I call API. Okay, and go live with this. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to the other one we did. Okay. So you're welcome to just like watch and see what happens.
Okay.
Okay, so if I go look at the network tab and then I hit refresh, I'm going to see that I made a network call out to JSON placeholders, typecode.com to-dos. This is all this stuff in this headers section is what's going to show up in that result that we were creating here. Okay, so we're going to see all this information, or a bunch of it. Okay. Now we got a 200 back, which is an okay response. And if we go to preview, this is what the response is going to look like. So it's an object that has, it's an array. So it's sending us back an array of all these different objects. Okay, and each object has a completed ID, title, and user ID. So we get all this information back from this to-do API. Okay, and it looks like we're getting a couple hundred results. Okay, so but all it's returning is a single array of all the objects. Okay, so we know that's all we're getting back. Sometimes it's going to be an object that has a results or like a data key, and then that has the result on it. So like with Swappy, when we go look at swappy.dev and we open up the dev tools in here, and we hit people and we hit request, here's that same thing shows up here. If we go to the preview, I get a count, so I'm getting an object back from Swappy, not an array, but an object. and the object has count, next, previous, and results. And then the results is an array of objects. So this has a little bit more structure, whereas this JSON that we get back from the placeholder one is just the array. Okay, so it just depends. Like your cat one, what's the cat one? Cat facts.
It's a cat dash fact Heroku app. Slash facts.
Oops. Slash facts. Okay, so are you calling facts or fact? Because I get an array.
There's an S at the end.
Catfact dot Heroku app.com/facts.
Yeah.
See, I get an array of them.
Yeah. And you want to set the animal type to cat, so you do animal underscore type equals cat in the URL. With a little slash. Sorry.
Slash animal.
Slash random question mark animal underscore type equals cat. Random.
Oh, slash random. Okay, slash random is probably good enough. I probably don't need to specify that it's a cat.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is what you're getting back because you're asking for a single random fact. Okay, if you got rid of random, it would give you an array of objects back. But because you said I want just a random fact, now you're just getting a single random fact back, which is just a single object. Okay. So every API is going to be different. So it's completely dependent on whoever wrote the API and how they structured their data to send back to the front end. So you can't ever expect that, oh, I can do the exact same thing every time. The only thing you can do the same is what's in this get to dos right now. Okay, is I know that I'm going to fetch it. It's going to have results. The results have this okay. I'm going to run the JSON function and return it and await it in this case, right? And then the data is going to be what comes back. So now, as far as what this data is going to be completely different on every single one. Also, whenever you do async await, we should throw a try around it. Notice it didn't matter, like it'll still work, but if it runs into an error, there's nothing that will catch it, and so you have an error that says nothing caught the error. Throw new error. Okay, so now I can take this data and I can return it. I could say return data, right? Or I could even, because I'm creating data here and I'm not doing anything but returning it, I can just return the await. Okay, and then if I call get to dos, and I say const to dos equals get to dos, then I should be able to console.log to dos. Let's see what happens there. Here, console. So notice I'm getting a promise back because I'm not waiting for it. So if I said dot then to dos and threw that console log in here and got rid of that, now I'm going to see all those to dos. Okay.
Okay.
So I can also put this in a new function that's async, but then I have to write a function and call it again. So I can just do this and I get all those to-dos back. Now because those to-dos is just a big array, I can then do the to-dos dot for each, right? This is just an array, so I can do whatever I want that I could do with an array. So I could map, I could filter. So I could say filter all the to-dos, so it's a to-do, and each of the to-dos has a completed. Okay, so I'm going to say anything that's completed, I want to filter out. I only want to see to-dos that aren't complete. Okay, so I'm going to say filter not to-do dot complete. So if it returns true, then it stays in. If it returns false, then it goes away. So if I say not to do dot complete, then that's anything that's false. Right? Anytime completed equals false, then this function will return true, which is weird, but that's how you read that, right? So I'm going to say const incomplete to-dos equals to-dos.filter, console.log, incomplete to-dos, and now when I look at the console, I guess all of them are complete. Let's see if I change it and say, show me only the completed ones. So apparently none of the to-dos were completed. Unless I have that wrong. Let's make sure it was complete and not completed. It's completed. That's why. Okay. Okay, so I get 110 instead of 200 back. Okay, so I can just do anything that I can do with a normal array, I can do here. Once I get the data back. Then it's just giving me JSON. Okay, it could be an array, it could be just an object, it could be an object with a key in there that has an array of data. But you just, whenever you start using an API, typically there will be some sort of documentation around what it does, right? So in this case, here was the resources. I could have just clicked this and gone here and looked at, okay, this is what to-dos gives me back, right? Swappy does their documentation like this. I can hit request and it'll show me what it comes back with. There's also on Swappy, I can go to documentation and it'll show me like, okay, here's all the different resources you can hit. If I go to people, it tells me what the different IDs or options I can send it. So I can send it a schema or an ID or just people. So this is similar to the CatFax where you could send random or you could tell it the animal type or whatever. Right, so films, and then also it tells us these are the attributes that you get back. So this is what the shape or the schema of this comes back with. So and this one has this schema option where I can send it in, and if I do that, I think it'll just show you. It'll send back like what the. Well, maybe it doesn't work. View the JSON schema for this resource. So, or maybe this doesn't know how to. Yeah, maybe this doesn't know how to do that. Anyway, but yeah, most APIs, especially open ones, are going to have documentation like this, where you can go through and you can see like, okay, this is how I authenticate, this is the base URL, this is how rate limiting works. So this is an open source one, which means they're not going to let you hit it more than a certain amount of times in a period of time. Otherwise you have to authenticate, and you'll still have rate limiting probably. Here's the schema for it. It has different helper libraries. So if I wanted to do something in JavaScript with this, there's this Swappy wrapper and Swappy node that somebody's written some function or some library that I can go use to just get the data, and I don't have to write the fetches and everything. Okay, so, but most sites will have some sort of documentation. So this JSON placeholder, this is their documentation. It doesn't show you a whole bunch of stuff, but it does show you like, all right, here's all the routes. There's get, there's posts, there's patches, there's puts, okay? So, and it says all HTTP methods are supported. You can use any of these requests. Here's a guide. If we go to the guide, then it will show us, you know, oh, I want to see all the posts. I want to see all of the, you know, I want to create some, so create a resource. This is what I should do when I create one. This is what it comes back with. So, but those are all the resources, right? So if I wanted to create a to-do, I could create a to-do with with a post against to-dos, most likely. But in here would be the guide for how to do all that. Okay. So, and then there's examples. So those examples, but it says use fetch, which we're using. Okay. So most APIs are going to have some sort of documentation though. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
They're all going to be different. So does that give a better understanding, Christian?
Yeah, a little bit. I was gonna ask, do you think that we could do like a few of these maybe in future sprints, just so that we can
Yeah.
kind of run through the practice of like recognizing different APIs and how they're built differently?
We'll start doing some projects where we hit APIs and pull down data and learn how to manipulate the data and whatnot. So
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. And you're more than welcome to, you know, with that list I gave you, you can go look at any of those and see how they work and play around with them. But yeah, we'll definitely have some projects like this sprint. We have a project where you need to hit an API and get data back and then render it on the page.
Okay.
So
Yeah, the last generating.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, and we'll have stuff that's more like, we'll probably do stuff with this JSON placeholders to do one. And we'll build a to do app that you can actually get to do stuff back and then, so yeah, we'll build all this like different stuff out. So, but yeah, okay. Good though?
I have a small question about the error. I'm confused about the errors, like when we, just confused about that part. Like, what's
In the code?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to, let's say we hit Todoist like that, okay? And now if I go to, is it this one? No, I think I closed the, is it that one? No. There it is. Okay, so now I've hit a link that doesn't exist. So I get this 404 back, okay? So my code says, is the result okay? And remember, try is gonna, catch only throws, so it only hits into here if the server says I'm down, okay? So I couldn't get to the server, or it doesn't exist, or whatever, okay? So in this case, the server exists, the server's there, the server got my request, but it returned a 404. If I go look, I got a 404 back. Now I have this that says if the result doesn't come back, then I can't call JSON on it because it's not going to return what I want, right? It didn't get any data. So if it's not okay, if it's not a 200, I don't want to try and get the JSON off of the result. I want to tell the user something went wrong, okay? And most of the time, this is something went wrong because of a bug in the code. Sometimes we're going to get bad data back because the user filled out a form and they filled it out with weird information, or maybe we tried to hit something that was required you to be authenticated, and so you're supposed to have logged in, or maybe you're trying to hit something that you're not allowed to even if you're logged in, because it doesn't belong to you, right? So all of those are going to hit this result, and it's going to say the result was not okay, and we're going to throw an error. And most of the time, you can, if inside of this if statement, we can have better error handling that says something like, okay, so the result's not okay. We're going to say if result dot code, is it code? I have to console dot log result. Okay, so here's the result back. Status. If result dot status is equal to 404, then we're going to say throw new error that doesn't exist, right? In fact, if we look at sometimes we'll get like status text back from an API, and we can use that status text. Or maybe there will be an error text or something like that in the response. If we look at here, our response is just an empty array, or like we didn't get any response, it's an empty object. Sometimes there will be a response that's like, yeah, that doesn't exist. So we can use that. Otherwise, we can just say, throw this error. And maybe we don't throw an error. So this is just something I've thrown in. We can do whatever we want here. So maybe we say, let's see, grab the apps. I have an app root here. So maybe I get this app and I say, if it's a 404, then we say app.text content equals that resource doesn't exist. Okay. Else if maybe the result status is equal to 401, which means that you're not logged in and you need to be. So then we could say app.textContent equals you need to log in. And maybe it's a 403, which means that, so we can say 404 not found. Let's put it inside here. 401 unauthorized. 403 forbidden. So app.textContent equals you don't have access to this data. Okay, and we can get rid of this throw new error, and then at the end of the result we can say return, so that it doesn't go on to this. So our whole entire thing here is, if it's not okay, we don't want it to try and do this. Okay, because that will cause our app to crash. But we can do all these other things if it's not what we expect it to be. Okay, if we get a 500 back, so let's say the error isn't, so maybe to do is fine, right? So it says this resource doesn't exist because to do is a 404. Maybe it was to do's, so I get their to do's back, and then I would have like some other thing that's like app.text content let's see, incomplete to-dos dot for each to-do. And what's the to-do have in it? There are bad times. Oh, see, now I got bad times because it failed for some reason. So, but because it failed and didn't hit the, it didn't get to the server somehow, then that caught here and had the bad times. And we can do the same thing here. We don't have to throw a new error. We could say app.text content equals something went wrong. Try again later. Right? So, and maybe we put that here if and do all of these as a return too. Right? So, or maybe we don't do all the returns and we just do an else here that says if it was none of those things, but it still was not a 500, then just say something went wrong. Okay. So I don't know if I can recreate that issue. Doesn't look like it. But something did go wrong. I wasn't able to hit the URL for some reason. So that's why I got this one. Anyway, then I can say in here app.append nodes after the last child of node while replacing strings. Child const paragraph equals document dot create element paragraph dot text content equals to do dot title and then P. Okay, so now I'm rendering all of the to-dos in the app. If I got a 404, then it says this resource doesn't exist. I could try and reproduce these 401s and 403s. I think all the gets are probably open, all the posts. So this endpoint probably won't give me 401s and 403s for now. But if I was to try and do something in an app that you needed to be authenticated, I could easily get these back from those. Okay. And then let's change this to like JSON placeholder instead. And then I'm going to get that something went wrong because I get a failed. This is the browser says I can't reach that resource. So this is in the catch. In fact, if I throw server error in here, and you'll see server error. Okay. So does that make sense why we were doing all those errors? It was just a quick way to say like something went wrong, so we'll just throw an error. It'll show up in our console, or you can throw it on the page so the user knows something went wrong, right? A lot of times you'll see like toasts happen where they have like a little banner that drops down and it's like something went wrong, and you're like, I don't know what just happened. So and you're refreshing the page to try and get it to work. So, but that's the reason is whenever you're hitting an API, you're not in complete control anymore. So you have to be able to, you have to do some things to say, okay, if the API is down, what happens? So this would be the server's down, this is what happens. Or the user tried to get a to-do with a certain ID, because I think in that to-dos API, there's probably a way where I can say, give me a to-dos with a, with a ID on it. So let's say I wanted to get to do which is a function, and it does fetch base URL /to-do ID, give it an ID here. Okay, we'll make this async. Try catch. And I'm just going to do console.error just so that we know if there's an error. Okay, but here I'm going to say const result equals await fetch if not result dot okay else const data equals results. Actually, we can just do return result dot JSON. Okay, and here we can say if result dot status is equal to 404 app dot text content equals to do with there isn't a to do with ID equal to ID. Okay, and we'll just return. Oops. Okay, so now we could say get to do. I'm just going to comment out this one so that it's not getting run. And we'll say then to do console.log to do. Or maybe we just take this up here. Okay, but we need to pass in an ID. So if I go to my thing, my app, there isn't a to do with ID equal to undefined because I'm not passing in a to do. Okay, so let's pass in to do number 1. Okay, and here I get that data back. Now we know there was like 200, so let's say to do number 400. There isn't a to do with ID equal to 400. So this is how we handle the 404s in this case, right? Because we're going to get a 404 back that says that one doesn't exist. But I could do any of them within the range of what does exist and get back some sort of to do. And in this case, this is just the single to do, so it's just an object, it's not an array of just that one. So is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, any other questions on the API, XHR, fetch? No? Okay. All right. Let's shift gears then. If anybody needs to take a quick break, we can take a 5-minute break if you want, or we can just keep going.
I'm gonna run to the other room and grab water, but I don't know if I'm gonna go for 5 minutes.
Okay. Take a quick break and then we'll jump into some React. You can go get some more? Or are you good?
He's so wonderful. He's reading my mind.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. I'm dark coffee. I'm worried about the girl, because she would notify, she would let us know when she wasn't coming.
She said she wasn't feeling great.
Oh, she said that that's the,
Um,
all one of our people who usually.
She said she might still come, but then I don't know if she was wanting us to say it was okay for her to come.
Oh, okay. She's waiting for some sure.
But her reason she was going to maybe come was because she thought she might throw up and she didn't
Well,
want
she
to.
had discovered virus now.
Yeah, and she didn't want to throw up in the car. Oh crap, I don't think I was showing my screen in the stream. That's good. Yeah, she said she was gonna go home. She said she didn't feel good. I was just showing the camera on the stream, so the YouTube video is just gonna be me talking and being like, yeah, did this and this and that and this other thing. So, yeah. All right.
You gotta have a plan while you're going, one of those, AJ video sessions where I just watch maybe 10 hours of AJ video.
Oh yes, all the videos.
So I'm gonna be collecting them all at once.
Well, I mean, you were here for all of them, so you don't need to watch
Yeah,
them.
but I need to play back some of the ones that, projects and
Okay. So, on the Brightspace stuff, if anyone's interested while I'm gone, I opened these up. I don't know if you got emails about them, but there's this front-end development with React, and then a security one, which needs to go after. It's essentially more React stuff. It's called security because they do some stuff around not allowing you to see certain things in React unless you're logged in or whatever. But you're all welcome to start looking at those readings in the front-end development with React. So, and it looks like it kind of goes through some more JavaScript stuff first before it gets into the fundamentals of React. And it's going to talk about NPM and some like NPM modules. So it's a little bit before you actually get to the React stuff. So it'd be good to look at. I thought I opened it up. Why is this showing that it's not? Can you guys see any of that?
It's a little bit
Yeah. Well, what did you say?
I can see it on your screen.
Okay, but yeah, let me know if you.
I haven't.
Yeah, if you log in and it's not there, I'm wondering if I have to.
I see security, front-end development with React,
Okay.
and then IWD summary assessment.
Okay. Yeah. So if you click in here, you should see, Module 8 Introduction. That's what I'm wondering if you can see that or not. It looks like maybe you can't.
I see security on the bottom, front end development. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you clicked into front end development with React, does it have anything in it?
Well, it has lesson React. Looks like this. Well, no, not really.
Yeah, that's all I see too is lesson React.
Oh, just this lesson, huh?
Yeah.
That's dumb. All right, I'm gonna click through all these. Super annoying.
Whoa, I just got them.
Yeah, they're from the.
Yeah. Because I'm unhiding them. So I'll just do it for the React stuff for now, and then I'll save the security stuff for later. Okay, so you should be able to see all those now. So next, what I would like to do is just talk about a little bit about React. So I'm going to create a new HTML file, and okay. Okay, I'm going to create this div in here with root on it. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about what React actually is doing under the hood before we jump into completely React. But essentially what React is, if we go to its documentation, React.js org, and we pull up the doc site, okay? So their tagline says it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, okay? So, and then it has a whole bunch of information about how to use it, okay? But let's look at, we've built a little bit of interfaces already. Even this little API tutorial was kind of an interface of, of sorts, where we did UI without having any sort of library, right? So let's throw a script tag here, and I'm just going to create a little interface that says hello world, and I'm going to do it in vanilla JavaScript. So kind of like what we just did with the to-do stuff, we'd say const p equals, or let's do an h1, okay, equals document dot create element. Okay, and we'll do an h1 dot text content equals hello world. Okay, and then we would say, so we're gonna get this app root. Okay, so const root equals we can even call this element rather than h1. Element root equals document dot query selector, and we'll get the root, and then we'd say root dot append child element. Okay, so now if I go and look at my screen, I'm going to see hello world. I'm going to throw this over here and throw this here so we can see what's happening. Okay. All of this is all controlled by, our little bit of script that we wrote here. If we go look in our body in the root, we see there's an h1 with hello world. Let's maybe add a second element, const tagline equals document dot create element. And this one can be a paragraph, and then we're going to say tagline dot text content equals vanilla.js, and I think I can send, I don't know if I can send multiples here. Okay, so you can just say append child tagline. Okay, so I have hello world vanilla.js. All right, so this is how I would add this kind of stuff, and we've done different things with elements, right? I can, on the text content, I could say, or on this element, I can say element.class list, right? Or even class name is just a string, and I could say title, and then tagline dot class name equals subtitle. Okay, and if I look at my HTML now, I see title and subtitle there as the class, and I have everything that's happening here is happening over here. Okay, so this is how I would start to build out this app or this site with it all being JavaScript run. Okay, I'm not writing any HTML except for this one thing, and JavaScript's creating all the HTML. Okay, so we've kind of done this a little bit, right? With our API thing we just did, we created those templates and then used the templates to create elements in HTML. Okay, so this is where React comes in. Is we can create all of these JavaScript elements and whatnot with React. So let's look at just under the hood how React works. So I'm going to grab it from unpackage. Okay, so I'm going to say, is there like a, okay, let's do this. I'm going to say script source. It's going to be unpackage, and then we're going to do this one, which was React DOM, and then React DOM. Okay, so now if I go back here, you can see I'm bringing in React and React DOM. This isn't the best way to bring in. Why does it say it's refused to execute script? Okay, I want that one. Okay, so now in the window, I should have React, which I do, okay, and React DOM. Okay, so React DOM gives me some functions to be able to actually render into the DOM, and then React gives me functions to create my elements. Okay, so I can take what I did here, and I can say const element equals react.create element. Is that right? Create element. Okay, so I have that create element function here. And create element takes a tag name and some options. So same thing as our create element here. I'm going to say it's an H1. And then in the options, instead of doing this element.textContent, element.className, I'm just going to be able to pass it an object of those same things. So I could say, instead of text content, React takes a key of children. Okay, and so I could say hello world in this children thing, and then class name of title. Okay, so now I have this React element. What do I do with it? I would say React DOM dot render. Okay, and we're going to render this element. Okay, let's see if I can get the. Okay, I think it's at render React DOM dot. Yeah, render. And then we'd send it the element and the container. So the element's going to be this, and then the container was this root one, so we'll grab this piece here, and uncomment it, and we'll give it root. Okay, so now I'm using React to do basically the same thing I did down here. Now I want to have that tag, that second tag, which was called tagline. Okay. So I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to say React dot create element p, and then give it an object. And I'm going to say, oh, let's see, this should say children is vanilla JS, and class name is subtitle. Okay, and then I need to render it. So how do I render it here? Maybe I have tagline and I pass it two things. Okay, that doesn't work. In fact, it blows up. So even though I can, in React or in here, right, I could have done root append child. So let's just get rid of the React stuff for just a second. I think I could have actually done an array here and said tagline like this, and rendered them both. Maybe not. What type of node? Maybe append. Okay, so I can just do append. Okay, instead of append child. So I can send it a list, but in React I don't have that same option. So React has an element built onto it. Okay, which we could say, instead of this, we could call this title. Okay, we'll say element, let's get rid of tagline here, equals react dot create element react dot fragment. Okay, and this creates an element that allows me to pass in anything I want, and then it has all these different things. So I don't have to have like a div that holds all of this. I can still have the H1 and the P how I want. So in this case, I'm going to say children, and it can be an array. And I'm going to move it down here. So in the array, I can say title and tagline. Okay, and now I have these children of that element. If I go here, you can see it looks the same as it did when we were doing this. In this case, we're in React.js instead of Vanilla.js. Okay. So this is what React is doing under the hood, but nobody writes React this way, right? So you're looking at this and you're thinking, I have no desire to learn React. I don't want to write a whole bunch of crap like that. I'd rather just write HTML, right? So let's go to the next thing that React will do. So I'm going to comment out these pieces here. Okay, and instead of doing all of this stuff, perhaps I want to do just an H1, right? So I'm going to say const element equals H1, and then instead of, this is called JSX, okay? It looks just like HTML, but it's JavaScript. Okay, and we're going to say H1, and if I wanted a class name on it, I'd say class name here, and it's going to be title, and then children goes here between the bracket, or between the tags, just like in HTML, okay? And then I hit save, and it should render, but it doesn't. And why? Because JavaScript doesn't know how to handle this tag, and that is where Babel comes in, okay? So let me show you Babel.js. Okay, so Babel is a tool, and it's an NPM library, but it's a tool that will allow you to take newer versions of JavaScript and have it compile it back to regular JavaScript. So let's say I do div. Let's just go get that H1. Okay. And we throw that H1 in here, okay, and it says, oh, okay, I know what to do with that. I know that that's probably React, right? So I'm going to create a React element, and look, this looks just like what we did. Notice they threw hello world at the end rather than in a child thing, and you can totally do that. You can add as many things to the end as you want, and those will also be rendered as children on an element, okay? So this is another way to write that create element, but it's the same thing we were writing. And so Babel takes JSX and turns it into that React.create element function, and then it outputs it for us, so we don't have to do it. So I'm going to grab another unpackage library so that I don't have to use NPM right now. Okay, script, source. Oops. Okay, now with this, if I go back here, save it, it should work. Why isn't it working? Oh, you know what? I have to tell this, let me see. npm .im/ app babel standalone. Alright, it has to be, it has to have that type on it. So Babel will only mess with the script that has, when you bring it in like this, and we won't have to worry about this when we're writing our own React applications, but you just have to have that, and then it will say, okay, I know what to do now. Okay, so now we have hello world. Let's say I want to have const tagline equals, it was a paragraph, right? And it has a class name of subtitle, and it was React.js paragraph. Okay. And remember, we can only send one element here to React DOM render. So let's go ahead and make this into title again, and we're going to we'll move this element down here. We're going to say react.fragment, okay, and then we'll throw react.fragment end, okay, we'll say this one title and this one tagline. But you know what, actually this is what we'll do. So whenever you use a variable within React, you're going to say curly brackets, title, tagline. Okay, so now we have our title and our tagline. If we look at our source here, I mean, it still looks just like that HTML that we were writing before. Okay, so this is essentially what it will look like when we write React. But I wanted you to understand what React was doing under the hood and what it would look like to have to do that without React. Okay. Any questions off the top of your heads about React right now?
Not yet.
Okay, so let's have everyone open up your terminal. Go to your projects folder on in your dev island. So you should see pretty much the same so if you did pwd, you'd see your name /code/dev island /projects. That's where I want you to be. We're going to create a little React app together.
I don't have a project folder.
What do you have?
I just have
You have code.
yeah, it's
So do cd space code tab dev island. If you hit tab, it should finish up, and then projects, and then tab, and then hit enter. Now if you do pwd, it should show you that. So yeah, if pwd doesn't give you this, then you need to do cd code dev island projects, or wherever you store your projects. I think most everybody uses projects, right? If you do ll, it should have all your projects in it. Okay, so Is everybody there? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to run an npm script that's built in with npm. It's npx. Okay. And we're going to say create React app, and we're going to call it 14 underscore React tacos. Okay. And once you type that, you can hit enter, and it should start going through a whole bunch of scripts. So what it's going to do is it's going to go out and use an npm package to pull down a template and create an application from that template. What's it say?
Install something.
Need to install the following package, create React app. Yeah, so if it says it needs to install, just hit Y and hit enter. I don't think mine will say that because I've already installed it. But once you hit yes, it should run through like this. It's going to run through a whole bunch of stuff. The Wi-Fi's here is slow. Did you guys just finish yet?
Not yet.
Typically there's
Oh, just kidding. It's good now.
happy hacking. Mine's still slow, but I have my computer is streaming to YouTube and to Google Meet and trying to pull this down.
So you have triple working.
Yeah. My fans is going nuts.
There we go, happy.
All right, so once you get here, okay, we need to CD into it. So it says, we suggest you begin by typing CD 14 React tacos. Okay, so that is, you should now have a folder that's 14 React tacos, right? Just like you put. So we're going to CD into that folder. And notice it's already a Git repository. Okay, so it's already, if we did git status, it says we're already on the branch. If we did git log, we're going to see that each of you has already committed once, and it says initialize project using create React app. Okay. Q to get out of git log. Okay, so at this point we have this React app. Let's look at what it's got in it. So I'm gonna get out of this. So if you're still here, let's and you've CD'd in, let's type code space dot, and that'll open a code editor, a VS Code editor, with this project and only this project. Okay. Everybody got that?
I might have missed something. I did CD 14 underscore React tacos, code space dot, and then it says command not found.
Okay, so I don't know why your VS Code keeps getting rid of the thing. So do Command Shift P inside VS Code, and do command line. No, it's shoot. What is the thing? Shell command. So type shell command install code command in path.
Was I supposed to put, npm start before code dot?
No.
Okay, cool.
Code dot should open a new editor.
Yeah, it did, but I just scrolled up and it says that when I change the directory to the React tacos, it says that it suggests me to put npm start.
Yeah.
That's why I asked.
So that's how we'll start the project when we're there. Once you have the new one open, you should see pretty much the same sidebar, yeah?
Now that look as cool as yours.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
See, I don't have all those cool icons.
it's just an extension.
Yeah.
I think it's material icons,
Scott is-
material icon.
Oh, okay.
If you want to install material icon,
Okay,
thing,
let's go up to.
just go to extensions
Oh, okay.
and type material icon, and then it will be the first one. If you install that, it should make your icons cooler.
Because I want cool icons, but I want to look at that before I get there.
Yeah, and then select that material icon theme at the top.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I already did it.
And then go to the, well, because you now have two icon themes, so it wanted you to activate the icon theme.
Okay.
So now if you go back to the top one on the sidebar,
Right here.
oh, the top icon on the left. Yeah, that one.
Mhm.
Now you have,
There we go.
now you have these icons.
Now I feel like I'm.
Oh, yeah.
Living Jacob. All right.
All right, so we have our node modules. We're used to that. We have this public folder, and inside the public folder, we have this favicon icon, which is a React logo. We have an index.html file. Which for the most part, we're not going to do much in here. We might change our title from React app eventually, but most of this is going to be generated. Just like, remember when we were doing the Webpack stuff, and it created our title and it created everything for us, okay? So you can see there's these public URL weird things. This is a template string, okay? It talks about this in here. So most of the stuff in this public folder, we don't need to worry too much about. But as you add different logos or favicons or whatnot, you have to go add them into the index.html. And if they're in the public folder, then you need to add this public URL. So that's how it gets the favicon and these logos and the manifest and then the robots text, okay? So if we look in here, there's a manifest and there should be something for robots, but maybe not. So, nope, robots text, I guess, just is here, so it will go in the build, okay? Most of what we're gonna do is in the source folder. So if we open the source folder, we can see there's a few JavaScript files, there's some CSS files. Notice there's no HTML files in the source folder, okay? All that we're gonna do now is JavaScript from here on out, okay? So the first one to look at is this index.js. And index.js has some import statements, okay? So it brings in React, brings in React DOM, and then it brings in, let's see, the index CSS, it brings in the app, and then this web vitals, which we don't really care about, but and then it's doing pretty much the same thing we were doing before, okay? It's React DOM, and then it's create root is the new function. There used to be a render. I think it's deprecated now. So Create root is what you use now. And then we create the root from, oh no, it does have a render. So create root, you pass it this element, which we were doing before. So get element by ID, root, and then on this root that's been created, there's a render function. And then that's where you pass in whatever you're rendering. So in our case, we had this element that we were passing in. In this case, it's passing in React.strict mode and then our app. So we don't need to really do anything to index.js. It's already set up whenever we create a new React app for the time being. Sometimes we'll add some stuff inside of the render, but our actual app is going to be completely in this app component and other components that it brings in. Okay, so next we look at our app.js. So in our app.js is a function that returns JSX. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a function keyword like this. It just has to be. It could be, const app equals, and it could be a arrow function, or it can be a regular function. Okay, it can be either one, but it needs to return a JSX object or a JSX element. Notice we're only returning one element because you can only ever return one element from each component. Okay, so these are called components, and each of them should have an element, and you return one. If you need to return two like we were doing before, then you use a fragment. Okay. But here we're bringing in our logo because we're going to use our logo and our CSS file for this file. Okay. So now that we've kind of looked at this, the CSS is just that. It's just CSS files. Okay. So there are ways you can do CSS in your JavaScript file too, but we'll just write CSS for now, and then it knows how to import them just like we did with our Webpack. So open up your terminal that's in this so that you're in your React tacos, okay, and let's run npm start. Hit enter, and it's going to run. It's going to take a second to spin up. It says start development server, then it's going to open your browser. Yeah, it might ask you to allow it the first time. Hit OK, and everyone should see exactly what I see once it actually finishes spinning up.
There we go.
Okay? Everybody got that?
Yep.
Okay. So let's look at our app.js because that's what's causing this. Okay, so we've got this div with the class of app. It's got this app header class on this header element. So notice this is just pretty much exactly the same as the HTML we were writing before. The only difference is instead of class, we use class name in React. Okay, so you don't want to write class like this. It needs to be class name. Okay. And then anytime that you're going to use something that's a variable, you use curly braces. So whether it's on an attribute or inside of the code somewhere. So let's say we had like const my name equals AJ. Okay, and I wanted this to say hello, my name. Okay, then I use curly braces and I put the variable inside of it. This is kind of similar to, when we have template string and we use the curly braces with the $sign. But we just use the curly braces, and then when I save it, it'll automatically reload, and then it says hello AJ because that's what the variable says it should. Okay, if I get rid of that variable, run it, it's going to have an error. Pops up and says my name's not defined. And I say, oh yeah, I forgot to define that. Okay, so we'll get rid of it, we'll reload. Okay, so let's take like 5 minutes and everybody open up app.js and just kind of play around with it. Change the HTML around, You're welcome to open up the app CSS file, change the CSS file around if you want to. Just kind of get used to what this looks like and how it works. Notice here's an anchor. It works the same way as anchors did before. Still have an href, target blank. This just makes it more secure. Again, the only difference here is class name instead of class. Everything else is the same. Okay. The one thing I would also like to point out is notice how all of these tags that are normal HTML tags are all lowercase. Okay. So this is important. In React, when you use a normal HTML element, you're going to use it as lowercase. If we go to our index.js, notice all of these are uppercase. We start with a capital letter. Any custom element that you create is going to use it uppercase. Okay, so if I say app here, because I can name this whatever I want and save it, it's going to say app is defined but never used. I get an error here, and that's because the tag app is unrecognized in the browser. If you meant to render a React component, start its name with an uppercase letter at app. Okay, so it needs it to be uppercase so that React knows how to render it. Okay, so any of your own components are going to be uppercase. All of the rest of the standard components are going to be lowercase. Okay, and that'll make more sense in just a minute when we start creating our own. But let's take, like I said, 5 minutes. Just kind of play around with it, see what it can do. You're also welcome just to get rid of all of it and say div hello world, save it, see how it works, you know. Yeah, I want an H1. Okay, maybe I don't want any of that. I want to go back. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll create our own little app here. Okay, so let's delete everything inside the app. So we want to keep the div with class name app on it. Okay. Save that. We should just have
Erase all the data, all we got there.
yeah,
All,
let's see.
everything is added there, yeah.
Let's keep the header too,
Okay.
since it's giving us the dark background for now.
All
We'll redo all this in a minute. I just want to create a paragraph inside there. It says the time is, or today is, and then we're going to create a date here. So above our return function, we're going to say let date equals new date. Okay. And then inside of the paragraph on line 9, we're going to do some curly braces and say date dot to local string. Okay. So now we should have just some text in the middle. Says that today is and the time. Okay. Now, I want it to update because it's already 8:12 now,
Yep.
right? So, how can I get it to update? So in JavaScript, we would do maybe like set timeout. Remember in the clock thing?
Mm-hmm.
Said like set timeout. Okay, and every 1 second, we're gonna say date equals new date. Okay, and we're gonna console log the date and see what happens in our console. Okay. So maybe let's do a set interval. That's what it is, not timeout. Set interval. Okay. It's gonna console log. Okay. So notice in my console, I'm getting the right times. Oh, now I'm getting multiples of them. So I don't know if you can see this, but I've got several. There are 2 of each one. And then, but my app doesn't have the new time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even though this date is changing, my render function isn't ever changing it. Okay, so React is smart in that it says if you have a variable and you print it on the screen, I'm not going to update unless you tell me to. Okay, so a couple ways we can tell it to, and the one that we want to use is we want to create some state. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that timeout, okay, for now. And what we want to do is we want to use React's function that's called useState, okay? So we're going to say const, and it's going to give us an array back of elements. Okay, the first thing in it is going to be the date, okay, and this can be whatever we want it to be called, okay. And then the second thing it gives us is a way to set the date, so it's a function set date. Okay, we're going to set that to use state. Now when you type use state, you should see it pop up here and shows React over on the side. If you click on that one, it's going to import use state from React, just like this. Okay. So, and this is a function, so we're going to call it, and we can pass it. We can leave it blank. We can pass it something. In this case, we're going to pass it new date dot to local date string, or to local string. Okay, so if you save that, should see that your date will update. Okay. Then let's use this interval and let's say, instead of console logging, we're going to say set date, new date, to locale string. Okay, and then notice my clock is now moving.
Something up there, like use state.
Oh, you didn't import it. So go back to the use state.
Okay. Right, here, right?
Yeah, just right after it.
Okay.
And then type, hold control and hit spacebar. And hit enter.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay,
Gotcha, gotcha.
is everybody there?
Let me see what
It's telling me that use state is not defined.
Okay, so do you have this line up here?
No, I don't. Thank you.
So if use state is underlined, you can put your cursor next to it and hit control spacebar. And it should pop up and have like a option. And you're just gonna click that one or hit enter. But just import that use state from React.
Wait, so hit control space bar and then what?
Should pop up and you can hit it. If you didn't already type that, if you typed that, then this is just a shortcut to get the autocomplete to come up for you. Otherwise, just type in
Cool.
import use state from React.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, let's see what that goes up. Sorry, I'm trying to come up on.
Go back. So get rid of date into two local string.
Mm-hmm.
Should be a two local string, not two local date string.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. Okay.
So, but now you need to change your set interval. So that it updates. So check out line 9.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, set interval.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, set the- okay, so that going in.
So it's essentially the same line that we have up on.
So my time isn't showing. The date is.
Are you using two local string or two local date string?
Ooh, thank you.
Get rid of the word date.
Yep.
I think it's locale. Instead of local, so there's the E. Locale string. Sharice, are you there too? Time's changing.
No, I think I did something wrong, so I'm just trying to figure that out.
Application update.
Mine seems like it's having a rough time. Every time it like goes to change time,
Mm-hmm.
flashes a little bit.
Whatever you got.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm working.
Yeah.
also mine says 6:24.
Yes, you're wrong, man. You're wrong.
6:24.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Is it 6:24 over there right now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It's 1:20 a.m.
oh, wow.
Oh, okay. The date.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the time was 6:24. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
That makes sense, brother.
No,
You're in the future.
Yeah.
Mhm. I am in the future.
Back to the future.
Let me tell you, not much has changed.
Especially you.
Except for you're an uncle.
Yeah.
So that changed.
Yes.
You are,
So if I try to pull up, the browser to go live and it brings me to the folders again, I'm going
You,
to.
you shouldn't
so-
you shouldn't use the go live.
Oh, okay.
We ran npm start in the terminal, so we won't use go live at all with React
Okay.
because it needs to run Webpack and actually like build stuff. Go live won't work at all. So open up your terminal and run. So you should see like this, right, in your terminal.
No, I see compiled with warnings.
Okay, so you did run npm start.
I don't remember, to be honest, and it's not moving. It's just,
In your browser, go to localhost colon 3000. Because if you see the screen like this, Sharice, compiled with warnings, then you're running
Yeah.
it. So you're already running it then.
oh, okay. So, and then, so,
But it's gonna run it.
okay, so I'm all good.
It's gonna run at localhost colon 3000.
Okay, thank you.
Now you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Yeah, and we do have warnings because so this automatically has ESLint built into it. So that's why we see like this little yellow underline here. And because we're not using that anymore, it wants us to get rid of it. So if I save it, then those warnings will go away if I get rid of that logo.
Okay.
Okay. So, but because I have that unused import, then it's like, hey, warning, you're not using this anymore. Did you mean to? Do you want to get rid of it? So, okay.
So get rid of logo, huh?
Yeah, we can just get rid of that line.
Just the logo line?
Yeah, just the logo line. Just get rid of this whole line.
Logo, okay.
So we're just importing the app CSS and the use state. And then if you look at your terminal, it should say
What if
compiled
It
successfully.
doesn't say that.
Then you might have other errors somewhere else. It should say what your errors or your warnings are. And if you go look at the code, there should be something that's showing.
Yeah, just, okay. Set date, it says.
So make sure on your use state you're getting date and set date, and they're in an array. So use state
Yeah.
returns an array, and with two elements in it, date and set date. Date being the value, set date being the setter for the value.
Okay. Yeah, I have that. Where is it?
Oh, and we can get rid of the two local string down here too. Just be date because we're already doing the local string up there. You got it now?
No, I don't know. I'm trying to find out why it's giving me issues and I don't know why it still says the same.
Do you want to share your
Oh.
screen? Oh, did you fix it?
Yeah, my, same.
it has this on it. This is the warning. But I don't know, it looks the same as what you have, so I don't know.
Set date is assigned to value but never used. Set date is constant. So are you using set date inside set interval? There should be just set date and then you call it.
Yes.
You have that line?
Yes.
If it says it's not ever used, make sure that they're named the same.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to share your screen? Are you able to share your
Yeah.
screen?
I don't think I have before. Sorry, guys.
You okay?
Are you good?
Is it-
It's this. It's
Is
the
it the
little.
present now?
Yeah.
Okay. On React. Oops, dang it. Oh, or your entire screen works too, huh?
Yep.
Okay. So this is, can you see it? Sorry.
No.
Oh, yeah.
What do you,
When you hit your entire screen, you see like a little version of your screen probably.
oh yeah.
Then yeah.
Click that.
Oh, and then share.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Can't share your screen.
Oh, you probably have to give it the permissions first. So just share that tab again that you were sharing, or the because you'll have to close Chrome to give it those permissions.
okay.
So we can do it at the end.
Okay. Okay, so if I share that tab, and then
And then we'll just open up your inspect and look at what the inspect says that you have.
oh, this, okay, the React app, that. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
So open up your inspector. Oh, I can't see your inspector. Dang it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's sharing the tab. So you might have to close or try and do the full screen again and do the thing it says. I can't remember what you have to do. You might have to open up settings, or it might open settings for you.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
And then you'll have to leave the meeting and like quit Chrome and then reopen it.
Okay.
So the other thing you could do is just copy paste your app.js into Slack or into the chat, and I can look and see if I can see anything off the code.
Yeah, could I try that?
Yep.
I just sent it and,
In Slack?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Sharice, where you have set date right here, let me share my screen.
Sorry.
So this line inside your set interval, it needs to be a function call. So it's set date.
Prettier keeps changing it, and I can't.
Well, you
I don't
don't,
know
there
why.
shouldn't be an equal. Get rid of the equals. So let me show you what yours is.
Thank you.
So this is what you have, and this is what it needs to be. So get rid of the equals, and then add
Just parentheses.
parentheses around it.
Equals and set date, just a parentheses.
Okay. No more.
You got it? Sweet.
Thank you.
I'm with that time.
Awesome. All right. So, now what we're going to do is we're create a new component. So, in your Explorer up here on the sidebar, open them up, and in source we're going to add a new file. And the convention in React is that any component, so this app.js is its one file with one component, okay? So each component gets its own file, and the name of the file is the name of the component. So now this isn't required, it's just what most developers do. This is kind of the convention that has come from React, okay? So we're going to create a new file, and the file is going to be named, we're going to create an accordion, kind of like from our FAQ accordion, okay? So I'm just going to call it accordion with a capital A .js, okay? Yeah, don't do it in public. Everything we do from here on out is in source. Okay.
It's called what now?
Accordion.js. Okay, so we're going to create we're going to say export const, or actually we'll just do it export default function accordion, okay. So it looks kind of the same as the app.js, except for we're just going to do our export default inline rather than at the end. So in app.js, they had it down here, the same thing, okay? Okay, and we're going to say return. And for now, we're just going to return a div that says accordion inside of it. Okay, does everybody have that?
Yup.
So in app, so we have this accordion. I'm going to leave it open off to the side over here. But in app, we're going to come here and inside the header, underneath the date, we're going to, well, first we're going to come up to the top and we're going to say import accordion from accordion, okay? And notice we have // just like with our app CSS. So And then underneath the today paragraph that we made, we're gonna say accordion. Okay, just like this.
So is that taking everything we put in the JavaScript, or in the accordion.js file?
What?
Is that taking everything that we're putting in the accordion.js file?
So this
And
import
so-
imports it in, and then it takes
Yeah.
whatever was returned, and it's gonna put it here. Okay,
So it's taking, so the tags are what is returned.
yeah. Okay, so now if you looked at your app, you should see the word accordion underneath your time. Once you finish this.
Yeah, I got that.
No?
It's something let me go back to my recording
I'll get rid of that curly brace or whatever is after the return.
It's not here.
Nope, the one after the return.
Oh, there you go. Oh, it is.
And then you want that div to be on the same line as the return. Then save it. Okay. Everybody got that? Christian, Sharice?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna move this back over. We're gonna go back to our accordion. Okay, so now we have this accordion component, okay? And in our accordion, we're gonna have a title and the body. Remember, and then it opens and closes, okay? So we can pass our accordion function some different properties. And they all come through with a in an object. So we're going to say object here, so curly braces, and we're going to destructure the object that's passed in. So there's one property passed in, and it's going to be an object of all the parameters or props. So these are called props. Okay. So we want the children here to just be the whatever's passed into the accordion. Okay, so we're going to say children, and instead of accordion inside the div, we're going to do curly braces children. Okay, so that says whatever's passed into accordion, because remember we had that magic children keyword, is going to be whatever we get here. So now if we save that, if you're looking at your browser, you see the accordion went away, but there's no errors, okay? So if we go back to app.js, this is the reason that went away, is because there's nothing in the accordion. So let's add, if you type lorem, does it not work in here? It's because it's not HTML. Okay, so let's type just whatever you want here. So this is a React accordion is what I will type. Okay, and once you add that in, then you'll see that render over here on the side. Okay. So anytime you pass anything inside the two tags of your own component, your component will get those as the children prop. Okay? Just like when we would pass, remember when we were writing when I wrote the other stuff and we used the word children?
Yeah.
Okay? So that's how this works as well. So this is just the children for the p tag that's being created. So it would look like react.create element p, and then children today is date, right? So that's going to be the exact same thing as writing this paragraph, okay? So, but now we've made our own accordion component. This is our own component piece, and we have this. This is our children. Okay, so But in our accordion, we want to have like a title and body. So how do we get it to, how do we do that, right? So there's a couple different ways. We could have an accordion with an accordion title, an accordion body component, and then have each of those do whatever when they're clicked. Or we could have the accordion handle all of it. So let's create a custom property called title, okay? And our custom property called title is we're gonna come in here and we're just gonna create, on this div, I'm gonna add a class name of accordion, okay? And I'm just gonna add some space here. Okay, I'm gonna say header. So this is just gonna be a HTML header, and that's gonna get the title. Okay, and then here I'm gonna put a paragraph around the children. Okay, and then once you save that, it should kind of format in this way. Okay, and if you look at your browser, it shouldn't change too much. There might be a little bit extra space because we added a paragraph, so it's now got some extra styling from the paragraph. But we're not passing in a title, so there shouldn't be anything there. Okay, so accordion's up here on the top, app's down here on the bottom. In app, what I'm gonna do is, just like in HTML where I have these attributes, React allows me to pass in all the HTML attributes like normal, like we saw with the anchor, it had all the href and everything that's normal, right? But when I create my own components, I can also pass in whatever attributes I am setting up as a prop. So I set up this title one. I'm gonna now in accordion, I'm gonna say title equals React header, or let's do accordion header title. How's that? Okay, and once I type that in and save it, I'll notice I now have accordion title over here because I am rendering it inside of a header here. Okay, so I should see accordion title and this and the children. So this is an app,
Gotcha.
and this is an accordion.
Okay.
Everybody got that?
Mhm.
Sharice, you got the title and the child?
One more second, sorry.
No, you're good. Travis still working on it too?
Sometime.
Now you have two accordions,
Exactly.
so get rid of one.
This one might be readable,
Yeah, but you still need the children.
yeah. Right.
So just get rid of the closing one, just created, and then get rid of the opening one that's before the child on line 17.
So open, get rid of the opening.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you
Okay.
You don't have to reload it, it'll do it automatically on its own.
I honestly have it.
Oh.
I got it.
Okay. All right, so now we have pretty much all the HTML is set up as far as the app goes, right? I'm passing in a title, I'm passing in the child. I just need the accordion to now work. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some state that says unless this one's open, I don't want to see it, right? So let's do, at the top, we're going to say import use state from React, okay? And then at the top above our return, we're just going to add a couple of lines, and we'll say const is open, set is open, equals use state, and we'll give it false. So this is just going to be true or false. Is it open? Okay. Okay. So down here in our accordion, we're going to use this is open to say whether or not we show this paragraph. Okay, and the way we do that is just like with these variables, where we threw some curly brackets around and we gave it the variable name, we can write pretty much any JavaScript code inside of variables. Now, you don't want to write like a bunch of logic in there, but we can write some true false type logic, right? So we can say, let's open up a curly brace here before the paragraph, and then after the paragraph, we're going to close the curly brace. So we now have curly braces around our paragraph. Okay, and we're going to, at the first of this, say is open, and we can just say and. So if it's open, and this, okay? So there's two ways we can do it. We can do that, or we could say a ternary, which a ternary is question mark. If it's open, then do this, and then a colon, otherwise null. Okay, so this is just an inline if statement. So you'll see both of these ways of doing React when you're doing conditional rendering. Just depending on what you're doing. Sometimes if you do the and, that returns the word false, and sometimes it'll show up on the screen depending on what you're using. So if it's not your own component, sometimes you'll end up seeing false, and so you have to do this way. So, and null is if you're not going to return inside of a render, if you're not going to return some sort of element, then null is the only other thing you can return. Okay, I think you could technically return a blank string because you're inside of here, but our accordion function has to either return JSX or null. Okay, so it's just good to get in the habit of if you're not returning something, then you're returning null. Okay, so now if you save it, notice your children goes away because we set our state to false. Okay, so now we're going to add a onClick, and I'm just going to add it to the header for now. We could add it to the div if we wanted to, so that anywhere on the accordion would make it open or close. We'll add it just to the header for now, and it's just going to be another attribute type thing. So since it's a 2-word, it's going to be camel cased. So get used to if you have 2 words, like class name is camel cased, onClick is 2 words, so onClick. Okay, and notice VS Code's really good at figuring out all of the different things you could do. So get used to using this autocomplete. Okay, so if you click that, just like in the variables and in writing any JavaScript, if you're going to use variables within your attributes, then you use it's going to equal and then the curly braces, okay? And in this case, we're going to say handle click, okay? So this is going to be a function that we create, okay? For now, it's going to say that doesn't exist, but we're going to create it. So above return, we're going to say function handle click. Yes, you can write a function with in a function, okay? Function handle click. Notice this no longer has lines under it, and notice we're also not putting the parentheses here, okay? So we're not calling it, we're just passing this function name to the onClick so that when it's clicked, it knows this is the function I should call, okay?
So it'll call it still?
It'll call it when you click. If you add the call like this, it'll call it when the first time it renders, and then the onClick will never call it ever, okay?
Okay.
So whenever you're passing a callback function to a function like this, you never call the function. So that doesn't mean you can't create it inline. So if we were creating it inline, it'd look like this, right? Now, if we were to call this inline function, we'd have to put it inside of parentheses and then call it. Okay, so this is what it would look like to do that. That's the same thing as saying handle click and then putting that at the end. Okay. So now inside of our handle click, we're going to say we want this to toggle, right? So if you click the header and it's closed, we want it to open. If you click it again, we want it to close. So for now, let's just say set is open, and we're going to say true. Okay, so we're going to call our state function, our setter, and we're going to pass it a new state. So this would be whatever the state is. Okay, right now it's false. We're passing it true. If you save it and go over and click on your title, now you should see it shows up. Okay, refresh, it goes away. Click it, shows up. Refresh, it goes away. We want to be able to click it on the title again and have it go back. So we could do a whole bunch of logic and be like, if is open, right? Or set is open can either take a new state or a callback function. Okay, so we're going to create a callback function here. So we're going to create an arrow function here, and we're going to use implicit return. Well, actually, we'll just do this. Okay, so this callback function is going to get whatever the current state is when this function was called. Okay, so we're going to say open, so that and we're going to call it open just so it doesn't conflict with is open up here. Okay, or you could even just call it O. So I'll say open. Okay, and then here we're going to say return not open. Okay, so this just flips whatever that boolean was. If it was true, now it's false. If it was false, now it's true. Okay, and because it's an arrow function, we don't have to have the return or these curly braces. We could just pass this back. Okay.
That's so nice.
Yeah, right?
Okay, so we could just do this. Okay.
Oh, lovely.
So now, if you save and you go back, notice also when I changed it over here, okay, it didn't change over here. So it did re-render, but React's also smart and says the current state was true, so I'm going to leave the state alone. I'm not going to update state and redo it so that it's initial state. I'm just going to leave state where it's at unless I go specifically say refresh, okay? So it's hot module reloading. It's only reloading what it needs to, and it's keeping your state the same so that you don't have a whole long form that you're filling out and you're like, oh, I need to change some CSS, and you change the CSS and now the form is blank. Well, it doesn't want to do that to you, so it'll keep as much of the state as it possibly can, okay? But you can see now if I click the header, and now I'm opening and closing that, okay? And now let's say I want to create a bunch of accordions, right? Save it. Now I've got a whole bunch of accordion titles, and I can just reuse all of those accordions. I can write CSS for those accordions so that they look like the FAQ accordion, right? Right now they kind of have ugly CSS because I didn't write any for it. But all I'm doing is rendering this out. So saying if it's not open, don't render it. And if it is, then render it. Okay? Any questions on your initial React component that you have now written?
William?
Just digesting.
Okay, so let's just refresh what we went through
Yeah.
today. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this set interval and just do the accordion. Okay, so in our accordion we're using this. This is called a React hook. This use state. Anytime you see a function that says use, that's a hook, and we'll write our own hooks eventually. But under the hood, what this is doing is it's a function that passes something back, okay? So we're passing it false, it's passing us back an array of two things. One being the state, and one being the state set function, or the set state function, okay? We created a function called accordion. That function accepts an object, okay? These are called props. We expect that we will take two props. One is the children and one is the title. We return JSX, which looks just like HTML, okay? The one difference being that these aren't just attributes for the elements, they're also properties for the React components, okay? In this case, all we use here is a class name. On the header, we pass it an onClick, which is a JavaScript handler, so we don't have to write like our document dot get element title title dot add event listener click, right? This does all that for us under the hood, okay? So we just say, hey, when it's clicked, run this handle click function. Also render the title that's being passed in here, right? And then here we're running some JavaScript saying if the state variable is open, is true, then render this paragraph with the children that's being passed in. Otherwise, render null. So don't render anything, okay? The handle click function calls the setter, the set state function. Now notice these can be anything we want them to be, right? These are just variable names. Use state just passes us back an array. And that array, we're just destructuring the array. This is called destructuring when you do this array notation like this. And we're just setting these two array elements to have these names. We could have named them anything we want them to be, okay? Just like in the app.js, we had that date and the set date. We can name it whatever we want, okay? So it's good to use set on the function, on the setter, just so that when you're using it out here, you know, okay, this is the setter for the is open. So that's a good convention to get used to, is that your variable, your state variable, and then your setter is set the same name as your state variable, okay? We call use state, we pass it whatever we want the initial state to be, and then we get the state back, okay? In this set as open function, we're passing it a callback function here. So this is our own function we wrote. We could have said function callback or state callback function current state return not current state, okay? Could have done this as well. Okay, so we just are doing it inline. This will work exactly the same, right? We're just writing an arrow function inline. We're passing it to this set is open, and it toggles the state back and forth. Like we saw before, we can also pass it just the new state. So this could have been true. It could have been a string that says foo. Okay, it could be whatever we want it to be. So in this case, we want it to be just, we just wanted it to toggle between those two booleans of true or false. Okay? So back in our app.js, we're importing our accordion element, our accordion component that we made. Okay? And then we're using our accordion component here. Title is one of the props that it accepts. And then children is the other prop it accepts. We can put children in here, or we could also have just put children up here, just like the other prop. Okay. But typically when you're using children, it's better to put it in as the child of the actual component. It's easier to read that way. Okay. And that's all we had to do in order to do a component, an accordion component. We could have another accordion here. This is the content of the other one. Okay, so now we have two accordions on the page. They both work independently. So these aren't real accordions, right? They're more like drop downs because they don't work together. But we could easily refactor this so that they work together. Okay? So I don't have time to do that unless you want to go a couple minutes over, and I can just quickly show you how you do it. But I think we've probably ingested enough on React tonight. Any questions on it?
No, not right now, just kind of digesting all this.
Okay. What do you think? Initial responses or initial
I
thoughts,
like how clean it is.
right?
Clean, yeah. There's not a lot of
I
dribbling.
can see how it's helpful, but it's very confusing to me right now a little bit.
Oh, it's new, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think because it's new and also not having a full grasp on JavaScript yet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like
But I can tell once I
Dude,
grasp it, it's gonna be.
new with unfamiliar. So
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
once
But I
it's grasp-
understand the, so far.
Like the concept of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I opened up the React reading. You're welcome to look at it. It's not required. While I'm gone, the only thing we're going to do is finish this current sprint. And then the next sprint will just be some JavaScript 30s.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And then when I get back, we'll probably do a little bit more, we'll do kind of a refresh on JavaScript itself, and then we'll start in heavy on React. Okay? Cool. Yeah, make sure you reach out in engineering help if you need help, and I'll see you all in July.
Okay,
All right.
how we do.
Have a good trip.
Thank you.
yeah, safe
Thank
travels.
you.
All right, brother.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.